It's almost impossible to find a review of Cyberpunk 2077 that doesn't devote half its time to slating CD Projekt Red for the state of the game when it was launched. But what's the game actually like? How does it play? What are its good and bad points? And is it worth your hard-earned money? These are all things I'll be addressing in my review today, so welcome back to Mark's Game Reviews, and let's take a look at Cyberpunk 2077. For those of you not familiar with the Cyberpunk universe, it's set in the near future, where corporations control the governments, gangs control the city streets, and humans have managed to integrate technology into their bodies directly. So if you wanted a memory card reader that plugs straight into your brain, or an interchangeable mechanical willy that doubled up as a food mixer, then Night City is the place for you. You play as V, who comes to Night City to make a name for themselves in the criminal underworld, but ends up getting caught up in a corporate power struggle, witnesses a murder, gets involved in a heist that goes badly wrong, and downloads a personality into their brain that may be lethal to them. How you choose to sort this out will be entirely down to you, as you do have a lot of decisions to make in the game as the story progresses, and your decisions and the actions that you take and the way you respond to those people around you will lead to one of 6 or more various endings that you can get. The gameplay itself involves a lot of driving and fighting around Night City as you run errands for various people, try to advance the storylines for the main characters, or just go off and try and do some of your own thing. You level your characters up with skills and perk points to tailor your character exactly as how you want to play them, and you get to upgrade your character's tech via implants as well, which is a big part of the game, or supposed to be. Most of the missions are like, go here, talk to the person, get this information, then go there and have a fight. You know the sort of thing. But the game is also very heavily dialogue driven. There's lots of cutscenes, lots of story and dialogue, which you can skip, but you shouldn't because it's one of the better parts of the game, and lots of decisions to make over what happens next. Okay, let's talk about the graphics and sound. And at the time of making this review in February 2021, you can split the graphics into 2 categories here. There's the cutscenes and story scenes with the dialogue, and then there's the open world Night City and the outskirts. And there's a bit of variation here, because the dialogue and cutscenes, the story scenes, they look absolutely amazing. The animation on the characters, the detail on the faces, it looks outstanding. If there's one small flaw I can say, is that some of the hair models just doesn't look right. It looks like a lot of the hair is wigs pinned on with a bit of glue, because it moves independently of the character's head and face and their character's movements. So it looks a little bit odd from that respect. But I absolutely love this. I think it looks great. When you get out into the open world of Night City, however, things are a different matter. It's designed to all look great from a distance, but you shouldn't look too closely at anything, because that illusion will be shattered. For example, you go up to a street vendor's stand and look at the bowls of noodles and things that they sell in there under the counter, and if you look closely, it all looks flat 2D, painted on like a sticker's being put over a plate. It looks terrible, really bad. This is the PC version I've been playing on, by the way. And if you look at things from a distance, it all looks nice and shiny, it looks pretty detailed, but the closer you look at detail on the surroundings, the scenery, the worse it is. It's like it's not quite ready, and this is going to be a theme of things throughout the review. It's just not quite ready, and they've papered over the cracks, and they've made it to look good as long as you don't pay too much attention. But generally, graphics-wise, especially the cutscenes and dialogue, that looked beautiful. I didn't have any performance issues whatsoever playing with a 1080 Ti on my PC at 1080p, which surprised me. I thought I would, but no problem at all with that. Sound, well, again, it's a tale of 2 halves here, because the dialogue and voice acting, again, is amazing. They've really gone all out on that. They've got some really good voice actors in this, and all the parts are played very well.
Hey, I was listening to that.
Shut up. Nobody except you wants to watch that shit about that corpo cunt.
What did you say?
You heard me.
Listen.
No, tough guy, you listen. It's people like you two that have brought this country to its knees. Taken our land, our jobs, our fucking dignity. But I own this place, and here I decide. So finish your tea and get the fuck out.
But other than that, the general city sounds, the combat sounds, the gunfire effects, all that, I don't actually remember any of that. And that's the thing, it obviously hasn't stood out. I do remember a lot of the explosions sounding kind of weedy, And so, general sound effects I don't think much to, but there's also music I should mention too. There's a lot of music in the game, not necessarily to everybody's taste, but it does seem to fit in with the theme and the cyberpunk universe. And there's a ton of radio stations you can choose from when driving around in the vehicles, if you so wish. Okay, let's talk about the stuff I liked and didn't like. We'll start with the good stuff, and the big thing that really stood out for me was the dialogue and the voice acting. Yes, I know I've just talked about it, but I can't emphasize just how good most of this was. I absolutely loved it. It really sounds good. They've really gone to some effort with the voice actors here. It just sounds superb most of the time. There's Keanu Reeves in this, and some of his voice acting I thought was maybe a little off or a little wooden. I don't know. I didn't notice it. The character he plays in this is absolutely spectacular, and the story involved in that is kind of cool. But generally speaking, I just loved it. If I could just listen to all the story scenes instead of having to play the game, I would enjoy it a whole lot more. And that tells you something about the gameplay, which we're going to talk about later. Now, I also liked the main story in itself, at least up to a point. I found that good and engaging, and I wanted to see where it went next and what was going to happen and what the next twist and turn was going to be. I enjoyed that a lot. I played some of the side quests. I started with one that turned out to be extremely dull and boring and disappointing. But the main story, it kept me coming back. That's what made me want to finish the game, because I just wanted to see what would happen. Also, there's a lot of decisions you can make as you go through the story and through the side quests too. And you probably should, because whatever decisions and choices and even actions you take whilst playing the game, who you leave to live and who you shoot dead, well, that all might come back to haunt you or reward you, as it may have an effect on the ending that you get when you get to the end of the main story. It's not too long. It certainly surprised me how quickly I went through it. I was expecting more of it. I was kind of disappointed in a way that there wasn't more of the main story, because to me that was the better part of the game, especially as I could just enjoy the dialogue, which I'm going to mention once again. I do, of course, like games where you have a lot of player choice, especially when that influences what happens in the story. And another area of choice you have is in exactly how much you can customize your character. And I'm talking more about the skills and abilities here. There's a lot of skill trees, and you can make a net runner, a technical character, a brawler, a sniper, an assault rifle specialist. You can play however you want in this, and it's pretty good. One kind of downside, or maybe not, of this is that you really do have to invest points into one particular character role and style. It's not like you can just try it all and see what you fancy, because none of those skills get better until you put quite a few points in them and unlock some perks, and then you get a really good strong character. The result of this is that if you want to try different builds and playstyles, you have to play through again. And whether you want to play through again is going to be dependent on how much you enjoy the game. But the option's there to customize and play the game just how you want and how you see your character developing, which is always nice. Fast travel around Night City is very good and simple to use. You just walk up to a terminal, click on it, and you can travel to anywhere on the map, even to areas that you haven't visited and unlocked yet. Not that they're really locked. You can just pick there and go there, which makes it very easy to do the side quests and avoids a lot of the monotonous driving several kilometers in between just to go and talk to someone, then drive all the way back to talk to somebody else. And I think the only other thing that I really liked about the game was the humorous Easter eggs and messages and references they put in relating to games and movies and stuff like that. It's always nice to find something, especially when you recognize it. There's a lot of, I don't know how to put this, there's a lot of emphasis on dildos for humour in this game, as you'll see them in bathrooms and sex shops, and there are some outrageous things to find out there. They might make you laugh, they might make you cringe, they might even make your eyes water just at the sight of them. But hey, I'm just a big kid, so they made me laugh quite a bit. Okay, let's talk about the things I didn't like with the game and the problems that I found. Unfortunately, it's a much longer list. Let's start with the glitches and bugs. There are tons of graphical glitches in the game, many of which weren't a major problem, and some I even found amusing, like a character's guns or weapons hovering in midair after the character had long since moved on or died. That happened also with a pair of chopsticks in a cutscene near the start of the game, which made me laugh at the time. But the more you see these things appear, the more you think, yeah, this just ain't right. You see NPCs in the street where one might be comforting another, but they're facing in opposite directions and they just don't line up and match up. These things didn't bother me as much as the major bugs though, and there are a few, and I nearly had one which broke the game. It was the can't take your weapon out bug, and this persists through turning the game off and booting it back up, and also it can persist through game saves, and the only way I got mine back was I had to go back a couple of saves to a point where that bug hadn't been introduced. This can be a real issue if the bug occurs and you don't notice, and you do a load of like storylines and stuff where you don't have to take your gun out for a long time, and then find you can't take your gun out and have to go all the way back to the last save that worked. That was a major issue. It might hopefully be fixed by the time you come to the game, but here's the thing. More bugs are being introduced with patches, of course unintentionally, but just before I finished the game there was a new patch landed, and that contained a potentially game-breaking and save-destroying bug that would stop you talking to someone you needed to talk to finish the quest off. Yeah, these sort of things, it just tells me the game wasn't ready. It just wasn't ready in all respects, and this is a common theme with all the failings that I found in the game. And let's jump to combat as well, because I really didn't enjoy this. I found this totally unengaging. It was too simple and it was too boring. But once you put some skills into your character's abilities, it just becomes insanely easy and dull because the AI is just terrible. It's stupid. It doesn't know how to respond. It doesn't know how to use cover very well. It's just not finished, I think. It needs more work, and I'm sure it can be reworked and improved somewhere down the line, and it'll make combat a lot more engaging. Thing is, my character's build was based around handguns at first and then sniper rifles because I loved the look of the revolvers. These two weapons specialise in headshots, and they could take any single normal bad guy out in basically one hit if I aimed it right. The rest of the time, enemies felt like bullet or damage sponges, and it was just boring. And even the melee combat, which seemed cool at first, going in swinging at people, soon became just a case of run up to them and mash the button until they dropped down dead. The bosses that you get to fight, they were a bit more interesting, although sometimes obscure tactics you had to use to actually take them down weren't very obvious. But there weren't enough of them. I mean, I only fought 2 or maybe 3 bosses in the game. There's only one I had difficulty with at the first because I couldn't see the glowy bit that I had to shoot. But once I figured it out, they became fairly easy again. They were far more interesting and lasted a lot longer, but they just weren't enough. I would love to have fought loads more big bad guys than I did, but I just didn't find them. And your average mook on the street was just no challenge whatsoever. And I could go into fights eating a sandwich in one hand and just wiggling the mouse with the other. I think, yeah, I'll be fine. I won't die. And it just felt like that. And as soon as it feels like that, you switch off and the combat becomes an unengaging side product of the game that you don't really want anything to do with. And that's how I felt about it. The general gameplay itself of Cyberpunk 2077, it just wasn't engaging, being sent on missions around the city to do stuff, talk to people, then drive back. It didn't really ever grab me. I never felt like I wanted to go off and explore. I wanted to do more of those side quests because, oh, they were so much fun, or wow, that was a challenge, or look at that cool thing we got. I never got any of that. It was just go here, talk to the thing, do the thing that they say, go back here, and I just found it really dull. Driving around the city wasn't good either. It's just boring and empty, and getting into trouble doesn't have massive consequences until the police really come at you, and then you can just go away and hide somewhere and lose them. And that's another thing I didn't like, the police system in this. They can just spawn on top of you. You can be in a room thinking you're hiding, and they can just spawn within the walls of that room and attack you. And it's just pointless and mindless. And you can be a 4-star wanted villain for running loads of people over, which I might have done. And they will just forget about you as if you just stay off the radar for not very long at all. Not a very good system and needs some work, definitely. I didn't like the inventory much either. I found it a pain in the arse to sort through and look for things. And part of the issue with this is that you pick up so much crap. You can loot every weapon off everyone you knock down, which is good. Okay, you might want that. The thing is, you can break it down for materials and sell the materials for more than you can sell the weapon for. So this encourages you to pick everything up, store it all until you break it all down. You can pick up flipping soda cans and ashtrays and junk. You can break that down, and you kind of need to because you can upgrade your weapons as you go with all the bits from this. But you end up picking up everything, and that's another bug I forgot to mention. There's lots of things you can see that are clearly meant to be picked up but can't be. Again, needs to be fixed. Game just isn't ready. But the inventory, a lot of the times when you're breaking these weapons down as well for parts, it's a bit like The Witcher 3, where you delete something from your inventory and your inventory suddenly reshuffles and you can't see what's coming next. And there's a couple of times I did accidentally sell or break down something I didn't want to because screens were covering up the list of weapons there. It just moved and reshuffled. And you know what? I just didn't like it. And while we're talking about the inventory, I didn't like the clothing system either. You spend a lot of time customizing your character when you create them, going for a particular look. Which actually doesn't matter all that much because unless you go and look in a mirror, you don't get to see your own character throughout the game. So it's kind of pointless. But the clothing, it all comes with stats, and basically you pick the clothing with the better armor. And this doesn't come in sets, as you might expect. It's just any random old junk that you pick up, like straw hats and big boots and a pair of beach shorts and stuff. And you end up looking like a complete tit, which completely does away with the aspect of trying to create this cool character to begin with. So I went around most of the game looking like I was wearing a stormtrooper's helmet with the face cut off and a pair of beach shorts and some weird basketball boots. And it wasn't the cool nomad concept I had developed at the start of the game. But hey, it gave me the best armor, so why not? And this leads me on to another category which can be good or bad, depending on how you see it, and that's the replayability. You see, there's multiple endings to the game, and you're going to get a different ending based on the actions and choices you make as you play through. That's always good. I love that in a game. And if you want to experience different builds, well, you're going to have to play through again because you really need to invest a good amount of points specifically into one build or idea or concept you've got for that character to really experience it. Again, that can be good. Here's the problem with the replayability. I just don't want to. I'd love to see what a Netrunner character build could do or a shotgun character build could do, because shotguns without any points put into the perks were garbage, absolute garbage. So I'd love to go and play with that, but I just don't want to play through the game again because the gameplay was boring, it was mundane, it was poor combat that I didn't enjoy, and the only thing that would draw me back to the game is to see what these other builds do and to get the different endings by doing the story quests. But to get all the endings or all the possible endings, you need to do tons and tons of side quests. Some might be good, like the Panam quests. She's a really cool character. I enjoyed those. Others, not so much. But overall, the gameplay, to me, just does not draw me in, and I don't want to play it again. Not at the moment, anyway. Which leads me into my overall opinion. You should probably wait with this game. You should probably leave it 1 to 2 years. Let them get out the free DLC that they've got planned. Maybe the extra expansions that will no doubt come. Let them fix the bugs and the problems. Let them tweak the AI and the character builds. And in maybe a couple of years' time, we might have a really good game here if they work on all those things. And I'm sure they will do. But right now, I don't want to play it anymore. I didn't even want to play through all the side quests, and that's really unusual for me. So based on everything I've mentioned here today, I would rate this game, at the moment, a very mundane 6.5 out of 10. Because whilst the story is pretty good, and the voice acting and dialogue is so good, I just wanted to watch it all, like stream it like a movie, I didn't want to play the game in between those bits, and that was the problem for me. I never wanted to come back and play more of it.